April Schofield has been teaching at Metropolitan State University of Denver since 2012. At that university, she is the director of the Center for Professional Selling. The program is listed as a top university for sales education and offers a major, a minor, and certificate in professional selling. April is also on the executive board of the University Sales Center Alliance. April, welcome.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to the Stukent team for hosting this event. I think it's a really wonderful thing anytime we can get this community of sales educators together. And just reading through the chat as you were introducing everything this morning, seeing people from Texas and Alabama and California and even in Canada, it's just really exciting to be a part of this and part of this community.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hop off stage, turn the time to you. When you're finished, I'll hop back on and we can do a quick Q&A, okay?
Perfect, thank you.
All right.
So I will start sharing my screen here. Okay, so we should be up and running. Okay, so thank you everybody for being a part of today's event, as well as being part of the broader sales education community. Very excited and honored to be a part of today's session. So our topic for this morning is connecting coursework to careers. So as educators, I think we are so very fortunate to be a part of our students' career journeys, right? We get to watch them launch their careers. We get a front row seat and we get to share their excitement when they get that job offer. And we get to do that, every semester or at least once a year. And our students, they might start planning for that maybe 1 or 2 semesters out before graduation. But I always compare that to Russell Wilson and our Denver Broncos saying, we're only going to start worrying about this football game in the 4th quarter. And no, we don't want to do that. We want their focus to be winning the second they step on the field, and probably even sooner. And likewise, can we help our students think about that winning moment, so getting the dream job, all 4 years rather than just that 4th quarter? So we've got a job to do. And today our topic is thinking about that career development as we design our sales courses for the entire 4 years that they are with us. So here is a look at our agenda for today. So first, we will start with a look at the skills employers want. In sales, we are providing students with a skill set that is highly sought after by employers. And these skills are applicable in a wide variety of industries, which I think is also a really exciting part about what we get to do as sales educators. Next, we'll talk about some examples of assignments that can help students learn these skills and practice these skills. And lastly, no session would be complete without the question and answer piece at the end. So let's start with some statistics from the Sales Education Foundation. And if you've been in sales education for a while, I'm guessing you may have seen these numbers. But the first one we'll talk about is more than 50% of US college graduates, regardless of their major, accept their first job in a sales role. Now, our sales program is housed within a marketing department. So we have a lot of marketing majors in our program. And we know that this number is significantly higher for marketing majors. Over 80% of them are expected to work in sales for that first job. The second stat we'll look at is over 60% of all new salespeople will fail within that first year. So that's kind of a scary number, and we can kind of hypothesize. I don't know exactly why, but I'm sure it's for a number of reasons. I know many of us here today have worked in sales, so we can attest that it's difficult. It can be a grind at times, especially if you don't know what to expect. I also know that many of my students, even in a sales class, if you ask them to go around the room and raise their hand, who's planning on working in sales, it's not many of them. And this is even in an environment in a class where they have elected to take a sales class. So a lot of our students, it makes sense if they're not planning to go work into sales, they may not take a class in sales or do the things to prepare to get them there. Number 3, students who graduate from university sales programs ramp up 50% faster, turn over 30% less, and save an employer over $200,000 in that first year. So we do see a correlation between sales education and sales success. And number 4, this one's exciting. Job placement for sales grads is high, 94%. So we know sales is a very common role for many of our students, even if they're not planning on it. And so it's so very important for us to make sure that they are prepared if and when they find themselves in a sales role. When we develop curriculum, we think about the hard skills and the soft skills our students will need. So let's start with some of the hard skills. So these are the technical skills that are concrete and tangible. If we're talking about sales education, these skills could be things like prospecting, using a CRM system, maybe some of those process-based skills like handling objections or closing. If we look at the soft skills, those are the human skills that make people successful at working with other people. And in sales, working with people is what we do. And so these soft skills are very important. So the soft skills might be things like listening with empathy, being able to adapt, building relationships. And if we maybe apply these hard skills and soft skills to a specific sales role, maybe something like a pharmaceutical sales representative, they certainly need those hard skills. So product knowledge, what does a particular drug do? What are the side effects of that drug? I would suspect they certainly need medical knowledge because they're talking to medical professionals all day, doctors and nurses, so on and so forth. And they probably need a good understanding of the law and the legal regulations that are specific to that particular industry and profession. The soft skills for them might be things like, how do I develop a trusting relationship with a doctor? How might I adapt my sales strategy when a competitor launches a new drug? How do I address cost concerns? And so our sales students need to be proficient in both the hard skills, the technical skills, and the soft human skills. So the skills that employers want, I have some data here, but I don't know if the same is true at all of your universities, but I know that every advisory board session I've been in, every meeting that we have with employers, the message is very consistent. Help students develop the soft skills. They're not saying neglect the hard skills, those are important, but this is an area they really ask us to focus on. So even despite the rise of automation and things like AI, soft skills seem to always top those employer wish lists. So things like listening, attention to detail, communication, critical thinking, interpersonal skills, active learning, those are very important in areas that we can help them with. Now this probably looks like a random slide, but I always use the analogy of learning how to drive when we're talking about learning how to sell. If we all think about, back in the day when we all learned how to drive, they start you off with driver's ed, right? They hand you a driver's manual with all of the rules. It's probably something electronic now, but you need to learn the rules of the road, the laws. So what do all of the different traffic signs mean? How do you merge? What does a flashing yellow light mean? All of these things. So you start by learning the rules. But in order to learn how to drive, before you can get a driver's license, you have to have a learner's permit. They want you behind the wheel. They want you to ride along with someone who's experienced, someone who can help you out. And so you can't fully learn how to drive without getting behind the wheel. And when you actually get behind the wheel, it's probably going to feel very different than what you expected. And then there's situations where you're going to have to learn how to adapt. So if you're driving on a snowy day when the roads are a little bit icy versus on a sunny day, what you do is a little bit different. And so our approach in sales and teaching sales is very similar. We're going to start by teaching you the rules, the process, the science, but then we want you behind the wheel. We want you to be in a sales role with somebody alongside you, helping you out and guiding you. And we want you to be in that role before you walk across the graduation stage. And so how do we integrate those hard skills, the soft skills for our students? And how do we give them experience and practice doing that? And so I have examples of 3 types of assignments that we use. Now, I am humble enough to know that I have some ideas, but not all of the ideas. And so I know that your universities are doing great things as well. And so my hope for today is that you take away maybe just one new idea or one different approach. And I'm also part of this summit today because I want to learn as well. I'm excited to hear Donald Kelly and Brian Hookstein's presentations as well. One thing I really appreciate about the sales education community is that everyone is so willing to share, and iron sharpens iron, right? We can collectively build this profession learning from what each other are doing. So I'm providing insight in some ways and some examples that our university has done this, but I also hope to learn from you all as well. So as we talk about specific coursework, let's start with events. And actually, before we talk about the examples, I think it's really important to point out that in order to make this stuff happen, we rely heavily on companies that have partnered with our program. It sounds cliche, but we could not do this stuff without them. They're very generous with their time, they're very generous with financial resources, and they're an important part of our team that we are very thankful for. So they play a role in all of these examples. Not only do they bring the real world into it, but they also have career opportunities for our students. So for our students, as we're going through our coursework and you're completing your assignments, the added bonus is you can find a career just by doing your coursework. So the first example we'll talk about is an etiquette dinner. These are actual pictures from an etiquette dinner that we hosted over the spring semester. And it's an assignment for students in several different sales classes. And we host this event to teach dining etiquette, to teach some of the social expectations. And then we want to give students a low-risk, non-threatening environment to practice everything in. So if you use the wrong fork or if you grab the wrong water glass, we're going to correct you, but no one's judging you in this environment. And we know that when our students go into a sales role, they're likely going to find themselves in a situation at a business event that includes a meal. So we want to equip them with the confidence, with the skills to be able to kind of navigate those formal dining situations gracefully. So here's a look at what that event looked like. We started the event with networking and happy hour because that's a very realistic way that many of these events start. It's also a way for us as educators to make sure everyone is involved. So when we start off, there are several students who are very, very nervous attending this event. And so we can kind of find who are the wallflowers, who are the folks that might be a little bit hesitant to jump in, and we can pull them in and kind of introduce them and really make sure they're involved. After happy hour, we went into the dining room and sat down for a formal 6-course meal. During dinner, as our different courses were being brought out, we had an etiquette presentation. So as our salad plates were being brought out, the presenter was able to explain, this is the fork that you use for this course of the meal, and this is, the direction that we pass the salad dressing around the table and those sorts of things. She talked, things like which utensils you use, where to place your napkin if you have to get up, posture, how to use the, just various etiquette things. We also had a partner who talked a bit about professional dress. So one of our partners, Tom James, they are experts in helping people dress professionally. And so they did a very nice presentation helping students kind of decode dress expectations. So if you get invited to an event and the invitation says business professional or business casual, what's the difference between the two? How do we know what to wear so that we make sure that we fit in and that we're comfortable? And we also had table captains at the event. So as you saw on the previous slide, we had round tables of about 8 to 10 people, and we wanted to encourage small discussion at those tables. So we had someone from one of our partner companies kind of leading that discussion. If you're in an event in a big ballroom with 150 people, students might be really hesitant to kind of raise their hand and ask a question, particularly if it's kind of a touchy issue, maybe how do I know who pays, or what do I do if I spill something? And so the table captains were there to kind of help manage those small group discussions. And it was an environment where students were much more comfortable to ask questions and engage. It was also important for us to provide this opportunity for our students at no cost. We didn't want a student to say, hey, I can't come to this event, or I have to take a 0 on this assignment because I don't have $100 to attend. And so that was a priority for us. Big picture for this event, though, our thought was if they don't have to worry about etiquette and dress, they can really focus on what's important when they go to these events, which is building relationships, meeting new people. This is an assignment for many of our sales classes, so we can't just say, hey, come and enjoy the event. We have to make sure these assignments align with the course learning objectives. If we have somebody who is majoring in professional selling, there's a chance that they could be coming to this event 2 different semesters. And that's fine, because there are going to be different people that they meet there and different things happening. But we have to make sure that the learning is still taking place and it's still valuable and it's still different for the students depending on the class that they're in. And so these are just 3 examples of courses. We have a number of different classes that are involved, but everybody has a different job, a different assignment, and a different learning objective depending on where they're at. So 3 examples of those assignments are personal selling students. We create elevator speeches before we come to this event. So students are focusing on learning how to professionally introduce themselves, make a positive impression, and then again, they're practicing doing that, starting conversations with somebody that you might not know actually at the event. Our advanced selling students, this is our capstone course. So these students, they already know how to introduce themselves and start conversations. So we have them in more leadership type roles. So one new thing that we're starting this semester is we're having them in what we call partner ambassador roles. So kind of almost like key account management. So instead of me having conversations with the partner companies, the students are taking that on. And so it is their responsibility to effectively communicate details, to make sure our partners have all of the information that they need, that questions are answered. When they come to our campus for this event and other events, they know where to park, they have a student to meet them there. And so the students are really focusing on building a relationship with those partners rather than that just initial introduction. We also have a social selling course. So the students that came to this event from that course, our focus was on LinkedIn. So before the event, we had to make sure that we had professional LinkedIn profiles established. We used LinkedIn to research some of the people who would be at the event, and we could kind of structure strategic conversations. And then they were expected to connect with a certain number of people from the event at LinkedIn on LinkedIn as well. So again, we have to be very strategic in creating assignments to make sure not only does this align with the course learning objectives, but that the students, they're learning even if they're attending this event multiple semesters. The next type of assignment example we'll talk about are ride-alongs. So what is a ride-along? A practice in the sales industry where a less experienced salesperson accompanies a more experienced salesperson on calls or visits to clients or prospective clients. Sales ride-alongs, very valuable development tool in industry, not just sales education. They can really accelerate the learning curve for a new salesperson. They can help reps avoid, those common pitfalls and really give them confidence and skills they need to get started in that sales role. Powerful tool for onboarding, mentoring new members of a sales team. And so our thought process was we have salespeople, experienced salespeople who are involved in our program. We're already working with them. Let's give our students that ride-along experience with them now. So this ride-along, this was a class assignment for our advanced selling students where we visited the office of one of our partner companies, Park Place Technologies. So we weren't actually riding along in a car, so to speak, but we had an opportunity to tour their sales floor, listen to real sales calls, and then debrief with the sales manager afterwards. They got a nice feel for what it was like to be in a sales role at that company. Beatrice, who's the young woman on the far left of this picture, she's a young alum. So she works at Park Place. She graduated from our program a few years ago. And so it was great for our students to kind of see that few years out vision. Park Place also ordered pizza for us for lunch, and we had a very informal lunch panel discussion. This was probably my favorite part of the event, not because I like pizza, but it was really candid conversation. So our students had an opportunity to ask questions like, what was it like to graduate college and then move across the country for a job? And so they really got some great answers, and they got an honest, genuine look at what a sales job is actually like. Because again, what we think it's like through our learning is often very different from what it's actually like when we get behind the wheel. We also had a partner who hosted 4 of our students at a leadership conference. They hosted in Houston, Texas. So this is ORS, NASCO, and MEDCO. This is a conference they host for leaders in their organization. And so they invited 4 of our student leaders to join in. And they were involved just as much as the employees of this organization were involved. Since travel is involved, we went to Houston, Texas. We treat this as a business trip. So that is a learning opportunity in itself. So before you even get to the conference, there's a lot of learning happening about traveling for work. Again, we wanted to provide this at no cost to our students. So to steal a line from my colleague, the only thing that the students had to pay for was their gummy bears at the airport. And so this wasn't as much of an assignment as it was a reward for our student leaders. But they got some great real world experience in this ride along. And the third way we provide our students with opportunities to develop those hard skills, soft skills, is through simulations. Role plays are a standard in every single sales class that we have here. And I'm sure many of you assign role plays, but I'll share a few unique things and how we kind of differentiate those role plays between the different classes. So again, all classes do role plays, but we need to make sure each class aligns with those course level learning objectives and that the role plays are a little bit different in everything that we're doing. So our Introduction to Selling course, this is our sophomore level sales course, kind of their first dip into sales. We use the Rainmakers competition, and I'm actually really interested in learning about the new Stukent competition that they are rolling out as well. But in this competition, students are selling to an animated bot, not necessarily another person. And so for students who are just coming into sales, they're very nervous about role plays. They don't worry, they don't stress about selling to the bot as they would selling to another person. The bot's not going to hang up on you. The bot's not going to yell at you. All of those terrible things that they're worried about. So that is a great experience for students in that class. Our Inside Sales class, we've been able to develop a relationship with another university in Helsinki, Finland. And so for that class, Inside Sales, the focus is on really selling virtually and some of the nuances of what makes that a little bit unique and how it's different from selling face-to-face. And so our students have an opportunity to interact with buyers in Helsinki and other students in Helsinki. And so that is an experience that we were very much looking forward to. In advanced selling, again, those are our students who are maybe 1 or 2 semesters out from graduation. And so our sales role plays in that class, at least one of the sales role plays that we do, are mock interviews. Because the most important thing that you will ever sell is yourself. And so we want our students to be comfortable selling themselves in interview situations. And we tell them there's really no such thing as a mock interview. It is not uncommon to get a job offer or an offer for a second interview in these mock interviews. We also created an intercollegiate competition for role plays. So yes, we conduct role plays, but we wanted to do something to engage the broader sales education community. again, we learn so much from each other, and our students can learn so much from each other as well. And not only do we host a competition, but we also travel to other competitions. A few things that make our competition a bit unique. We host 16 students from 16 universities. As you can see, the name of our competition is Rocky Mountain Madness. That's a play on March Madness. If you follow college basketball, you've probably filled out your NCAA bracket. So we use the bracket format similar to March Madness. We have a 6-round sales process. So we try to mimic an actual B2B selling process where we know those sales aren't just done in one 30-minute session where we sit down. Those things take time. And so we try to mirror that. And then our emphasis is on inside sales. So our entire competition is done virtually. So this format, it provides students a very real world sales stimulated environment. So that's the last example I'll share about really specific coursework. But I wanted to share some things, the what could go wrong, because every salesperson has a story about when something went wrong. You can plan and prepare all day, but inevitably something will go wrong. And our events by no means were perfect. So the things that I worried about, the things that really kept me up at night, number one on my list was alcohol. We serve alcohol at our events. If we are hosting a happy hour or a networking event, we have alcohol there because that's how it is in the real world. And again, we want to stimulate that as much as we possibly can. But it's definitely something that I worried about. First and foremost, I never want somebody to feel like they have to drink. And so we make that very clear that nobody is required or expected to drink in situations where we are serving alcohol. I don't drink at work events. I'm not opposed to it. It's just my personal preference. So I always share with the students, if you don't drink as well, come find me. You can sit at my table. I'll introduce you to people, but we never want anybody to feel uncomfortable in that environment. If students do choose to drink alcohol at our events, we set very clear expectations on what that means, and that overdoing it or irresponsible behavior will not be tolerated. We hire a professional bartender at all of our events to make sure that it is managed properly, that they are checking identification on all of our students. And so setting those expectations up front. We share with the students, you never want to be the example. Do not be the story that we tell students in future generations of you not handling this situation responsibly. But thankfully, it has never been an issue. Another thing I always worry about is ride-along logistics, and I'll actually scratch that and change it to just logistics around a lot of the events that we host. I recognize that we are operating well outside of our 75-minute class period. We are asking students, if they're visiting a partner's site or if they're coming to an etiquette event, that's half a day or that's a full evening that we are asking them for. And so I always worry that it's going to be a challenge because I know students are missing other classes or they are missing work. And so I have, with intention, we want to make sure that every minute of this event is worth their while. And so our focus is on what the value of this is for students. Yes, and it's an assignment, but we also want them to think of it as an investment in their career. So think bigger of this than actually just an assignment for your class. And the last thing I always worry about is our online and students who might be located outside of the Denver metro area. Our professional selling major has an online option. And what that means, so students are still attending classes synchronously. So we can meet at a specific time, but not a specific place. And so I feel a very real sense of responsibility for making sure that the experience is equitable for students, whether they're coming to our campus or whether they're an online student. I don't want students to feel like they're getting a less than experience simply because they are an online student. So everybody is always invited to these events. Still, even our online students, they are located in kind of the 5-county Denver metro area. So the vast majority of them still come to this event. They want to come to the event. We do have backup assignments ready to go. Last semester, I had a student who was located out of state and said, hey, I want to go to this, but being in Denver is just not a realistic possibility for me. And so I was actually able to call a director at another sales program and say, we've got this student, he's located really close to your campus. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's our assignment. Do you have an event that he could come to, and can you loop him in with your partners? And they said, yes, absolutely. And very similarly, about a year ago, I got a call from a sales program director who said, I have a student who's moving to Colorado. Can you loop him in with your partners? And they are so excited to meet these students. And again, I think that kind of speaks to the sales education community, how everybody's just so willing to help each other out, because we're all trying to do the same thing here at the end of the day. So those were some of the things that really kept me up at night, that I worried about, but those were not the things that actually went wrong. So what actually went wrong? Allergies. At our etiquette dinner, my colleague got a FaceTime call from a student who was down the road at Denver General Hospital who had an allergic reaction to something in the food that we served. Thankfully, he was fine, but it really made us realize we have to have conversations with the caterers. We need to understand what questions they need us to ask in registration, and how do we communicate that information to them. And the other thing was scheduling conflicts. I need to realize that the folks who are helping us out, they have full-time jobs, they are busy, and they have a lot of different priorities. And that's not a bad thing by any means, but if they are scheduled to help us out and something work-related comes up, work comes first, and that's fine. But being able to pivot and having a backup plan in place is always so very important. And I think this gives us a chance to practice what we preach, right? Because we're teaching our students to be adaptable salespeople, to think on their feet. And so they get to see us kind of doing that as well. The big area where this comes into play, I think, is the role plays. We've got a lot of moving parts when we're in role plays. And so our ratio is 10-1. For every 10 buyers that we have scheduled, we need to have at least one backup in place. Their calendar is blocked off. They are ready to go if we need to plug them in. And I've even sat in as a backup buyer as well. And so that's where I'll wrap up. I know we're coming close to time. And again, my goal today was just to share examples of how we integrate the hard skills, the soft skills, and career readiness into our sales classes. So I will, Darlene, I don't know if you want to.
I'm here, April.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone, go ahead and put questions in the chat if you have them. We've been noting your questions, and April, we have some good questions for you. I love how involved you are in this and all of these extra things that you're doing for your students. It's amazing, the details involved in the etiquette dinner, and even the table captains. I mean, it's like you've thought of everything. So it's really fun and exciting to hear this. I'm going to just jump into some of the questions that we have. Lisa asked, in regards to the etiquette dinner, how do we teach this without a budget for the meal?
That's a good question. And we are 10 years into our program, and we've been doing the etiquette dinner for 1. So that is certainly something that we built up to and took baby steps to get to. When we started, we looked at some of the resources that we had internally here that we could work with. So we would host our first networking events collaborating with our career services team, and kind of jump on board with some of the things that they were doing. So it's taken a long time for us to develop these relationships with the partners. But yeah, this is something that we've been doing in probably year 10 of the program. So that's a really good question, and something to acknowledge, because it does take the financial resources to make this stuff happen.
That's great. You definitely worked up to that. Beth is asking, at what level do you do the ride along? In the beginning or later in the program?
We do that later in the program. Again, we recognize that sales is a very common career path for the majority of students, but sometimes in the earlier sales classes, not everybody in that class is certainly interested in sales. They might be taking this class because they needed an elective and it fit the schedule, which is fine. But in our advanced level sales classes, I think it's more of a value add to them. I think they're more prepared. They know the questions to ask. And so that is something that we do. I don't think everybody in the earlier classes may not want to do that, but by the time we get to advanced selling, that's kind of charm school. They're excited about it. They're prepared for it. They're not intimidated by it. They're ready to go.
Great. What are the requirement differences between your sales minor and your sales major?
Yes, that's a great question. So our sales minor, that is 6 courses, whereas the sales major, that's a lot more sales curriculum specific. So the minor is developed for students outside of the College of Business who want to tack that sales component onto their existing degree program. So that's 6 courses that they'll be taking in sales.
Okay. Brad asked, do you have students target a specialty niche industry and specific sales positions?
Yes. So our professional selling major has enough flexibility where they are encouraged to find a minor. So if they are interested in a particular industry, so maybe tech or sports or pharmaceutical, that they can select a minor to help them prepare for that specific industry. When we talk about specific roles, we use a great tool that the Sales Education Foundation provides. It's called the Chally assessment, and it helps students kind of understand the different types of sales roles and the differences between those roles.
Great. Brad also asked, do you train on any of the predominant sales methodologies applicable to that and industry, like Challenger, Spin, Gap, Value, etc.?
We are sales guru agnostic. So we'll talk about some different methodologies. We talk about Spin, we talk about Challenger, but we kind of bounce around. And our thought process is we want to keep this as vanilla as possible so that whatever company they go to work for, that they're going to have their own method and the sales process that they're going to train them on. We want them to have a good foundation that can be applied anywhere.
Great. Vonda says that she's looking to start a selling institute and asks, how did you get this off the ground?
Yes, so the University Sales Center Alliance has been a tremendous resource for our program. I believe there's about 70 member schools of the USCA, and that's a consortium of sales educators. Any idea that we have had when we first started our program, being able to get together at those USCA meetings and kind of learn from people who are so much further down the road than we have has been a fantastic resource. And, kind of like I said, just that sales education community, everybody has been so willing to help us out and share what's worked and what hasn't worked with their program. We have learned so much from that community.
That's great. Michael is asking if you can provide any admin-related documentation, tasks, lists for these things that you're talking about.
Oh, I would be happy to share. And if somebody has a specific question about a specific assignment or a syllabus, my email is on this slide. And I would love to hear from other educators and learn what they're doing. And I'm always happy to share what we're doing.
Great. Thanks for doing that. Debbie says, my school is interested in doing an internal sales contest. Do you have any recommendations?
Yes. Don't try to do it on your own. Take people up on help. There are always alumni and partners who are always so willing to help out with this, whether that's organization on the front end and helping with scheduling, or being buyers live during the actual competition. It takes a village to run a sales competition, and people are always so generous with their time and willing to help out with that. And I'm willing to kind of share information about our sales competition as well.
Great. Okay, Ken is asking the difference between USCA and SEF.
Yes, so two very great organizations that I would recommend getting looped in with both of them. University Sales Center Alliance, you apply for membership within the University Sales Center Alliance, so they have certain criteria that your sales program has to meet, and we have a fall meeting and a spring meeting, again, getting together and talking about best practices and topics specific for sales program directors. The Sales Education Foundation is also a tremendous group for us to be a part of. They provide a lot of resources for sales educators. If you've never been on their website, it's just full of so much great information. They're the group that provides that Challey assessment that we use to help students understand different sales career paths. They have a lot of great research posted to their website. Both very great groups to get involved with, and they've both been tremendous resources as we've built our sales program.
Well, April, it sounds like you have a lot of partners in what you're doing, and you've done this for several years. What are your recommendations for others as they maybe seek people to partner with, businesses to partner with?
Yes, and you'll be really surprised at how excited these companies are to talk to you and to meet your students. LinkedIn is a great tool for us to identify companies that it makes sense for us to work with. A great starting point is to look at alumni who's graduated from your program. What companies are they at? Why did they choose that company? And our alumni are always very excited to get involved with us. It's also very important for us to provide kind of a diverse set of partners. All of these companies might have, the same exact job titles, business development rep or whatever, but what they're doing at all of those companies is very different. The conversations that they have with their customers are different. The way they add value to the marketplace is different. And so it's important for our students to recognize same role, but very different depending on the company and industry that I'm going into.
Great. Well, April, that's the questions that we had. That's our time for today. Thank you so much. Your presentation was amazing. I want to come and participate in all the things that you talked about. It sounds so much fun. It sounds like a great program. Thanks for sharing that with us today.
Anytime, Paul. We'll save you a seat at that etiquette
I'll
dinner.
be there. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much.